Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today for Watercolor Wednesday, I have got an easy one for you. We're going to do a landscape, and I have a piece of paper. I'm using the Canson Heritage cold press paper. I bought this a couple years ago and haven't had a chance to really use it, and Arches paper has gotten so expensive lately, so I thought I would try this. It might be a cheaper alternative for you guys looking for 100% cotton paper. We're going to give it a whirl today. I actually did another painting on that will be for Critique Club. I can show you that towards the end of the video, but I think it's going to be a nice alternative. So I'm going to start off just by very loosely do this one light. Just lightly sketch a line about a quarter of the way up your paper. This is a 6 by 12 piece of paper taped down to just the old back of a watercolor block. Just go real light with that one. I feel like it's a little crooked, but I can level it out. Not a biggie. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we are going to put in just some kind of wavy lines to represent the shore. All right, I'm going to do the same thing over here. Maybe get kind of like a lake that's kind of opening up. I'm going to bring it right off the edge here, and then we'll have like kind of like a bush coming in there. All right, so just this little chunk right there, you're gonna want to make sure is level, because that's where the water is going to be meeting the other elements. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw some mountains. We're going to start about a third of the way down your paper. We can do the rule of thirds here, guys. That makes it look just naturally more pleasing to our eyes. We see that things divided up in thirds and we say, that's some good art right there. That's what we do. That's what those fine art critics do. They say, that's some good art. See, you could be an art critic. Oh, I don't know about that. I certainly couldn't. I know what I like. Can't tell you if it's good. Just like wine, right? We'll do a little smidgen of a little mountain back there peeking through. And what we'll do like is kind of a ridge here with make some nice layers. Layers are good, guys. It makes things interesting. And we'll do another little mountainy layer there. Okay, so we've got sky, we've got mountains. We're going to do some trees in here. What I want to start is kind of like what is going to be a frame for our picture. We're going to have some bushes, kind of a bush. We're just going to draw it just as this kind of scribbly little thing in there. We're going to do a scribbly little bush over here too. Right where I said that bush was going to be, except let's just give it a little bit of shape there. Kind of shake my hand while I do that. I'm going to just erase stuff I know I don't need. Okay, so I don't have those lines confusing me later. Okay, now I want to put in a nice tall evergreen right here. This I'm going to do almost like up past, not all the way. Not all the way up to the top of my paper, but definitely I want to break that mountain line. So when we do our layers, it's nice to kind of break our lines. It just kind of looks pleasing, satisfies that I don't know, that part of our brain that likes that sort of thing. And we'll do another one next to it, kind of shorter. You don't have to put the leaves on. If you just get the trunks, I think you'll be pretty good. And let's see, those are pretty low. Make that a little bit taller. And then let's do another one back here. Now I'm going to link to a reference photo that I found at pixhere.com. It's a copyright-free, not public domain, but copyright-free photo source. I'm just scribbling just so I know that it's a tree here. I'm just adding some scribbly things. We'll do another one shorter here. These are further away, so I want them shorter. This is kind of my tallest focal tree. And we'll do one more so we don't have an even number. Now over here, this little area in here, we're going to have a few little trees. We'll do one here, kind of just breaking that mountain line. I'm just putting some little scribbles. By the way, this pencil I'm using, it's just a mechanical pencil with a 0.5 lead. It's just an HB, so like a number 2 pencil kind of. And I'm going to do one there. I'm not keeping exactly to the reference photo. I'm just kind of using it as an inspiration. 1, 2. And then let's do one back here to make the, to give it the 1, 2, 3, give it the odd number. All right, any other little trees and things like that, I'm going to be putting in just as we go along with the paint. I'm going to erase that horizon line. I'm just leaving the horizon line right at the edge of the, just at the end of the water. I'm going to grab my big brush. Before we do any painting, I'm just going to brush off all the crumbs. You can do that over your trash can if you don't want to have to wipe your table down afterwards. All right, there. So that's all we have for the drawing. I'm going to tip it a little bit so you can see it hopefully without any glare. Okay, so I want you to use a big brush. It can be a big round brush, it can be a big flat brush, whatever you like. I'm going to use this number 30 round. I really like this brush a lot. And I am going to wet the sky area. So I'm going to wet right over above the clouds. I'm going to go right over those tree trunks. And just bring that water right over that. We're going to do most of this with a fairly large brush so that we don't get fussy. I'm going to try to keep this fairly loose. Okay. Now, in the summer, sometimes you need to wet your paper twice, especially if you live someplace that's really, really dry. I'm going to go, let's see, we're going to use a few different colors here. We're going to use some lemon yellow or Hansa yellow light. We're going to use some crimson. We're going to use some ultramarine blue. And we're also going to use some burnt sienna. So these colors, you probably have these colors, right? I'm just going to put that up there because I know I'm going to need that together. So I just mixed the blue and the burnt sienna right away. I'm going to put another pot of blue out though. I'm keeping my mixing over here, but obviously you can spread it out more on your palette. I just wanted to make sure that I keep it in frame for you. Okay, I'm going to start off with, let's see, I'm going to check my paper. My paper still looks like it has a soft sheen all over it. If your paper's starting to dry, wet it again, okay? Sometimes you need to do that. I'm going to start off with just some blue across the top. I'm going to clean, blot my brush, grab some yellow, start the yellow in towards the mountains, kind of in the middle. And then I'm going to pick up the crimson and I'm going to just kind of lay that over it. Okay, that's going to negate some of the green. We're getting a little bit of a green color there. This will fix it, hopefully. I have hope. Might add a little yellow ochre in there as well. Grab some of the burnt sienna. I'm going to add that up there to create some kind of atmospheric, moody clouds. I'm going to tip it around. Let the paint do its thing. I'm going to grab a paper towel and I'm going to lift out some little cloud edge areas. Get some little bright areas. See, don't be afraid of going in dark with a color because you're going to be adding some bright back in. Now I think I'll grab just a little bit smaller of a brush. An 8 to 12 size, anywhere in that family would be good. Grab a little yellow ochre. And I'm just going to wisp some of that, maybe a little bit more water in there. That's a little... Just give some of those highlights a little bit of a sun glow. I'm going to grab a little bit more ultramarine. Chase in just a little bit of blue sky. It's kind of like, you know, if it rains, like at around, not around dusk, but late afternoon, about supper time, you know, it starts to, and it rains, and there's still, like, it's still about an hour before sunset, so you still have some light in the sky. You get these really pretty pink and yellow clouds. The paint I'm using is the Mission Gold. And you can fuss with your sky as much as you want till you get it just the way you like it. I like to have some granulation happening, so I really think I want to leave it like that. Now I'm going to take that, what was that, number 10 round, and I'm going to do some work in the water here. I'm going to go ahead and wet it. Oops, it looks like I dropped a drop of water on the edge of that, so I want to lift that up so I don't end up having my paint go where I don't want it. So if you paint your stuff with water first before you do it with the paint's only going to go where the paper's wet. Paint is lazy. It's just going to flow where it's easiest to go. So remember that. Remember you got lazy paint there, and it's going to do the absolute minimum of work. Okay? And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some of that ultramarine blue. We use that in the sky. And we're going to just dash that in a few spots. Now, as you know, our sky color is going to be reflected in our water. So we've got to make sure that we get some of those colors in there. Now, we won't necessarily have it as robust as in the sky, because if you're getting those bright colors down over the mountains, there still could be a lot of blue sky beyond what we can see in our picture. So we want to get some of those colors, but it's okay if we still have a good amount of the blue. I'm going to rinse my brush. I'm going to take this brush out of my water. You will notice with your bigger brushes, excuse me, that they might require a washing after a painting like this, because there's just so many hairs and it just wants to grab that, that water. It wants to grab that water and that pigment a lot. I'm using the Mission Gold paints, like I mentioned. They are pretty strong, and I also noticed they shift a little bit more from kind of wet to dry. Just keep that in mind. This paper, I noticed, really enhances the granulation and the colors, and I love that. All right, I'm going to grab just a smidgen of my yellow with my dirty brush. Get a little bit of that in there. Okay, I also want to get some of that mix where I've got the ultramarine blue and the burnt sienna, because that's such a pretty color. I want to get some of that in. It just granulates so nice. That gray just granulates. I really love it when we mix that color up. Plus the ultramarine blue just granulates so beautifully anyway. So we'll get some of that around the edges where we're going to have trees in a bit. And let's see, we're going to be using a green in the trees, so what I'm going to do, I think I'm going to grab PG36. That is, it's a phthalo blue, yellow shade, basically is what that is. We're going to add a little yellow ochre to that. Now, Mission Gold paints, I do notice when you buy the pans, I love the pans because they're bigger than your regular half pans, but in this area, in this humid summer area, they get kind of sticky, and I don't like the way this palette's laid out with a set of paints on one side and a set of paints on the lid, so when I close it, one of these is upside down, and I do have issues with them kind of traveling on the palette. So it seems like whenever I use this, I have to clean up a little bit of paint that has splurped out. And that's very frustrating. So I like the palette, like the material of it, and the quality of it. I don't like how it's set up with some of the paint on top, and you can't remove them. You can take the pans out, but they're in these molded trays. Like the half pans come out, but they slide into a molded tray. So it really wouldn't be that useful if I took them out. It's just kind of frustrating. I just wanted to warn you of that. Love the paints, the quality of the paints. It's just the palette is frustrating because of that. And I think this paper is definitely good to substitute for arches. So if you are in that situation where you just can't seem to find a good, I'm going to actually make my stream go back a little bit further. Just try to keep wherever you end it, try to keep that pretty level so you don't end up with a weird looking situation. I think I need a little bit more blue in there. And I can always add some like shimmers and stuff, just some like darker blue after it, like ripples after it's all dry. There. There we go. I like that. Okay, now we're going to move on to our mountains back there. And what I'm going to do is grab a flat brush, and you can use whatever flat you want. I'm going for flat because it's going to help me keep my strokes kind of natural looking. So I'm making kind of a muddy purple. I've got crimson, ultramarine blue, and yellow ochre. So it's giving me a real muddy kind of purpley color. Almost a rusty purple, really. And then a little bit more ultramarine blue, a little bit more red, and we'll work on the mountains right in front. And don't worry if you get a fuzzy edge, because as things are further away from you, they're going to look a little bit blurrier. So if that fuzzes into the sky a little bit, that's perfect. You know, don't fuss with it. It's fine. And we'll do a little bit of that up here. All right, now next thing, I'm going to add some blue, more blue to that. I'm going to cool it down a little bit, maybe even add a little green. These colors are staying desaturated, meaning not super bright, so that's going to push them back into the scene a little bit more. And when you have it pushed back into the scene, it gives us depth. It makes things look a little bit more realistic. Now as we work down, I want a little bit less crispness because I want to layer over that. So I'm just going to go in with a wet brush and just kind of soften those edges, those colors, letting them just kind of bleed down behind where our trees are going to be. That's just a little trick so that you don't have to like really, you don't have to mask, you don't have to do anything fancy. You can just kind of blend it out. And anything that looks a little too stark, you can just kind of touch it with your wet brush and soften it a little bit. If you have anything bleeding too much, you can take a dry paper towel, fold it, just gently hit the areas that you're getting too much bleed on. It should take up the mountain color without really damaging the sky too much, because the sky will have sunk into the fibers of the paper a little bit. And it shouldn't move, it shouldn't lift quite as much. But don't fuss with it. You do not want your landscape to look fussy. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to that round brush, the whatever you have in the 8 to 12 range. We're going to mix up some nice dark green. So we're going to take that same green that we were talking about, that phthalo blue green shade. Look for PB36. If you don't have that, you can use your PB7 green. That's fine. You can even use a sap green. I don't happen to have a sap green on this palette, so I'm kind of making my own with the PG36 and yellow ochre. I think I'll add a little bit of ultramarine blue to that too, because I've already used that blue. I try not to, once I've really gotten going, I try not to add too much, too many extra colors, because I think it looks better if you can kind of mix from what you have. So we're going to have these darker green, I could do a little more blue in there actually. We're going to have these kind of like going up the mountainside. If we do like this, we'll have a little mist behind it. I think that's pretty. You can have a little peek in between these trees, but I don't want to cover all that up. That's good because we're going to have later trees in there. And I'm going to leave some of that on my palette so I can use it later. Now I'm going to grab some of the lemon yellow we were using earlier. I'm going to take a little bit of that color. Maybe a little more of the yellow ochre, make it a little more golden. And we're going to add, we need to make that a lot more golden. That's not bright enough to really show. Let's get a little more yellow ochre in there. Okay, we're going to add some of that. And we can go right across there because the other trees will show up just fine. And we're just going to bring that lighter color right up the mountain. And we can come right in behind, because anything we layer on top shouldn't have a problem. I am going to just hit the bottom of that with a little bit of water and help blend it in for now, so it just gives us more options as far as what we put on top of that. I think I will grab, I want to soften that a little bit. I think I'm going to grab a smaller brush, grab some yellow ochre, and add, with it, this is very pasty, add some golden highlights, just some, like the sun is kind of setting and giving some golden highlights to these trees. Just pasty yellow ochre paint on the ridges of the yellowy trees that we put in there. Even drag it down a little bit. And we can grab a little bit of the burnt, oops, that's not the color we used, the burnt sienna. And we can add a little bit of yellow ochre, a little bit of crimson. Give it a little bit of a red glow here and there. All right, with the same little brush, I do want to kind of open it up at the end of the water there, and the trees at the end of the water. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in there, drag up some kind of bluish green trees. Just to, it'll give it a little bit of depth, show it a little bit of distance. It's basically just color that I'm putting in here, right here, but hopefully that'll show as more of like a opening in the trees further away. And I'm just going in with some of that bluish green and just tapping on some texture. Okay. Let's see, now I think what I'll do is grab some of that yellow greeny color and just kind of tap in the bushes in the front. So those are going to be nice and bright, very saturated color. So it's like the lemon yellow and the green. Have some dribbled over to the other side of the palette that I'm picking up. Do some yellow ochre in there. Then I'm going to just grab a bigger brush, wet it. Get some texture that way. You can go in first with the big brush too, and then go in with a smaller one and add texture that way. It doesn't really matter. Do it however you like. This is coming together. I love it. Nice and easy breezy summertime painting. I'm going to add a little bit of more lemon in there. And then a little bit of the phthalo green in there. Sometimes they call phthalo green viridian hue, or if you're using an inexpensive student set, they might just call it viridian. And if it's really vibrant like this, that's what you got. Viridian, like a true viridian, is actually a fairly muted green. It's an earth tone, it granulates beautifully, but it's hard to re-wet. And you usually don't find that in a student set. I've never seen that in a student set. Unless there is a student set that sells colors in series. Okay, well good, that's coming along, that's drying. All right, I am going to go back to that number 10 round, and we're gonna work on some of the tall trees. Let's grab some of the phthalo green. Let's add a little bit of crimson to it to darken it. That's gonna help it pop. And, well, the sky is dry enough, I think. We're gonna start tip of our brush. I'll hold this at a little bit of an angle. And we are just going to, oh, I did end up going to the top of my paper, didn't I? I'm gonna end up this kind of dancing my brush along the trunk. Oh, I like that dark color. I'm gonna bring it all the way down. Almost to that bush. I'm just gonna leave a little gap because I don't really want it to blend in there. All right, we can do the same thing with this skinny guy right here. Gonna go right off the tape. And now I'm going to show you a neat trick while this is still wet, what we can do. Grab some of the brighter green mix. Grab some yellow ochre in there. You can kind of see how like liquidy these paints are. Can you, I don't know if you can tell from watching, but they get very juicy in the humidity. I'm just going to kind of drip some of this color, this brighter green, right into the darker color. I'm going to drip a little crimson. I just got to mix it over on the other side because I'm running out of space. But basically I just want to make sure it's nice and juicy. I can add some of that in there. And it will kind of capture the glow of the sunset. Now what we're going to do is, we're going to do this one right here. I'm just using that same kind of crimson color. And I'm just going to bring that right down the tree. And you're probably thinking, Lindsay, have you lost your mind? There aren't crimson trees in nature. What are you doing? You've gone crazy. You've gone loco, lady. What's up with this? Well, we'll do the same thing, but we'll drip in some of the green. Okay, guys? I haven't lost it, not yet. Well, maybe I have, but not over this. Okay, so now what we'll do, I'll clean your brush off because you don't want to make mud, right? Pick up some of that gorgeous green. And just let it drip. Grab some, oh, some ultramarine would be good in there. Kind of interesting, right? We got some cool things happening here. Why not? It's our little world. That really pops. I like it. All right, we'll go over here. We'll do this tree here. I'm going to pick up some more of that darker. Let's start at the top again. You can go at more of an angle if you want to have thicker branches. Go up on the brush if you want thinner ones. If you want more landscape training, I do have a landscape class. Watercolor Landscape Workshop. I will link that down below. We do a lot of rocks too in that. I know people struggle with rocks. Rocks are like one of my favorite things to paint. Let's strip some golden green in there. So yellow ochre and the green. Let's add a little of that. Can add a smidgen of the red in there too. I love dripping the red into the trees because it really gives a nice contrast to all the green. When you have a landscape where you've got so much green, it can really help break apart that. I don't mind if my trees bleed together, especially if they're on the same plane. I think that's an interesting look. If you were doing a snowy scene, you could throw salt into your drippy trees. That would look really cool. And let's do this other one, just kind of more of like a leftover green colors. And we could actually let this kind of drip into the foliage here. And we could throw in some beautiful golden yellows. Get a nice glow happening. Let some of that white sparkle shine and show through. Do some of that in here too. Sometimes you just gotta like, just play with your paint and let it do its thing and just experiment. I'm gonna grab a little bit of the burnt sienna. A little bit over here too. I kind of like how my scene's turning a little bit autumnal now with the colors. Okay, back here I want to cool it down a bit, but I do like that starting of the brown. Gonna grab some green with some ultramarine blue in it. Let's get a little more ultramarine blue. That's a color I always have to replace first in my palette. Oh, you know, I really like this. This is coming along nice. I was just gonna try to do this quick and easy, you know, and it is easy, and it's, you know, I think it's relatively quick. But then I'm like playing, I'm like, you know, let's not rush it. Let's have fun. We don't need to rush it. You guys got somewhere to be? I don't. Thinking about going for a swim today, but you can do that anytime. Right down the road. It's one of the great things about living in Maine, in rural Maine. There are ponds and beautiful places to go swimming. I might need to do more to that. I don't know. Let's work over here a little. Let's see what we can. I think I need to cool things down back there a little bit. Hopefully I'm not sticking my head in the camera. Sometimes I do that when I have to like kind of, I'm trying to like, it's almost like I'm trying to see around the corner. What's around that corner there? You know, it's like, well, I haven't painted it yet. I don't know. I don't think the reference photo is going to be, I don't think I follow the reference photo all that closely because I kind of just like, okay, what will look better in my picture? Forget about the reference photo. I do that, and I think it's a good idea to do that because you might have a better idea of what's going to work with what you're painting. Now I love that little contrast of the misty color, so I don't think I want to like cover that too much. I want to leave some of that yellowy stuff showing. So I'm just kind of tapping here, adding a little bit of nondescript trees. Some generic trees in here. Get a little bit yellower now that I'm coming down lower and closer to the viewer. I want to get a little darker. I'm turning this upside down so I can help, so gravity can help me with this. I'm gonna add some lusher green color at the bottom and just kind of let it float up into those trees, those like generic nondescript trees I just painted. Sorry about the mumbling, geez Louise. Oh, there. I think I like that. I think that's gonna work. Okay, we've got the paper pretty well filled. So now what I'm going to do is add some ripples and some like shadows in the water. I'm going to turn this sideways real quick. I feel like this is kind of, this should be a little flatter. If you keep like inlets and stuff like that level with the bottom of your paper, or parallel I should say, it'll help you with any issues where it may seem like you have like a unlevel or it's tippy or something. So I'm just going to kind of add some little ripples using the color from right above it. Okay. I'll do the same here, just kind of pick up any colors that I've used. It'll help me break this part away from the bush here in the front. I'm going to rough up that edge. I can kind of paint like this and then it looks like I'm seeing through the branches and the leaves. So you can do that too. Oh, I love that tree, man. Look at that granulation. Ah, so good. Throw a little bit of that in there. It's going to be blocked by the bushes there. I think I'd have just a little smidgen. A little bit up here. I like to leave just a little scant sliver of lighter color between my reflections and the land, just to kind of give it that definition. Okay, we're coming along. We're almost done. Now what I'm going to do is take some ultramarine blue. Okay, so we got some really pretty granulation, and when I say that, I mean like where the pigment particles kind of settle out and you see that gorgeous texture on the paper. And you don't want to cover all that up because it's so pretty. But what we do want to do is add a little bit more ripple and shimmer to our water. So what I'm going to do is just kind of very, very gently add a little bit of that in here. Again, I can go up to the edge of that bush and kind of break a little bit of that out. It just gives the water the sense of movement and gives it a nice contrast from all the textures it gives in the foliage. All right, you can have bigger strokes towards the bottom of the paper that's closer to the viewer and smaller ones further away. So if you want to throw in some big ones out front, you can. And then just keep little hairline ones towards the back. Okay, let's dry this up, and when I come back, we'll put on any final details that we need. Actually, before we do that, I just realized I have no rocks. How could I have no rocks in my landscape? Well, I don't see any in the reference photo, but I'm like, I need to see if I could pull a few rocks in here. I'm doing that with a credit card scraper. It's just a piece of a gift card that I've cut up. I think I could just put a few rocks there. Can I don't think I could put any anywhere else because that's really, I think that's good. All right, so I put a few rocks in here just by scraping some of the wet paint away because I do love my rocks. I gotta have some. All right, now we're gonna dry it, okay? Okay, now we're gonna add a few details. I did decide to grab my white pen because I just want to capture that the little glimmer of light right on the edge of the land, and my paint had kind of just overtaken that. Just wanted to get that little bit of a highlight in there, and I could throw in a few shimmers here and there. I think that's all I really need that for. I also want to use a sponge, and I wanted to add some texture into these bushes up front. So what I'm going to do is just wet my sponge. I'm going to pick up some yellow ochre. I wet it a little bit more. So wet it, you want to squeeze out as much as you can, but you do need it to be soft. This is just like a craft sea sponge you can get at the craft store. I'm going to pick up right from the pan, so I'll slide it over so you can see. I'm just going to lift up right from the pans some yellow ochre and some lemon and some burnt sienna, some crimson, and pick up a little bit of green from the palette. Just gonna tap it in there. Could do, I think I want a little more burnt sienna and crimson over here. Some contrast. Sometimes you get those rusty leaves in there. All right, I do need to do a little bit more, just a little bit of a contrast. So I'm taking burnt sienna, ultramarine blue, making myself a nice dark. Actually, you know what? A better dark would be phthalo green, and the crimson would be a better dark. Let's do that. And behind the rocks, I want to put a little bit of this dark. And I'm going to clean my brush, blot it, just kind of soften it out. Grab a liner brush with some of that. I can do some of the cracks within the rocks. I like to paint rocks. I love to get that texture, have that kind of hard texture in amongst the soft foliage. I just think it's such a beautiful beautiful detail in a landscape. So I really like to have that. Of course, some people really are frustrated with painting rocks. And if you don't want to, you don't have to. Obviously, it's your painting. You do whatever you want to do. And if there's any other places you want a little bit of maybe a little branch here and there, you can, or a little, I'd probably maybe just save it just for maybe a little bit of a shrub or something, grasses or cattails or whatever you want growing in a kind of a silhouette form. I kind of like these little naked shrubs here. You could dab on some leaves if you want to, or you could just have little naked shrubs poking out. Up to you. If you don't like this, don't do it, okay? So please don't feel like you have to do something because I'm doing it. You want these sharper, more contrasted elements though towards the front or the lower, towards the bottom of your paper, or starting from the bottom of your paper and working out. That's going to give you the more depth and believability. So I'm going to throw some little branches in my little bushes in the front, because it makes more sense to have that detail there. There's just these little lost and found edges, these little lost and found branches, right? You just see little branches here and there poking out. You can pay attention when you look at shrubs and things like that. That's when you'll see them. Not a lot of detail though in these. I might make this a kind of a dead tree actually. Just give the branch, the bushes underneath a little bit more definition there. All right, so now the moment we've been waiting for, taking the tape off. Excuse me, that is the best part, isn't it? It is for me. Well, you know, I love painting it. Painting it is a lot of fun. Taking the tape off, man, that's where it's at. I'll probably sign my name with that white pen because it'll show up really well. I can sign it right over that bush when I'm ready. And I like to heat my masking tape up if I've got my heat tool going anyway, because it does help remove it. All right, let's see what we got. And again, this is the Magello Mission Gold paints on the Canson Heritage cold press paper. It's cheaper than Arches currently. I don't know, prices have been going up, I think, because it's hard to get supply places, and you know, shops just can't keep their stock, can't get enough stuff to sell, so they've raised the prices. Boy, I like that. I hope you did. I hope you enjoyed painting along with me today. It's longer than I wanted to for a Watercolor Wednesday video, but you know, I think it's relaxing, and I think anybody that has been watching my channel for any amount of time, painted any tutorials with me, can paint this no problem. So please give it a try. Don't be intimidated, and enjoy the journey, enjoy the process. I want to thank you so much for watching. Please give me a thumbs up if you liked it. I'll have a link to my landscape course down below if you want to check it out. And I do have a special running on my brand new watercolor glass class, so check that out this month if you want to get that, because you can save 50% on the glass class this month. I'll put all that in the video description along with the supplies I used. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting!